Testing, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Welcome to Ninja Robot Studio LLC. I play on this stream video games and VR experiences and talk through them from a UX designer's perspective. And I usually go by genre. So I started with tabletop RPGs and did a report out on that. You can, if you check out my About section on my Twitch stream, you will see the examples of report outs that I've done on the research that I do here live. And I have also done platformers, and I just finished working on training sims, and now I'm going through research synthesis on training sims. I haven't decided what output is going to come from it yet. Maybe a series of articles, I'm not sure yet. But this is me working live so that you can see my process and how to do this for yourself. And I'm a visual thinker, so I like to use Post-its, but other people may like to use Excel or spreadsheets or something like that, because maybe you're more you prefer that method of thinking. I prefer to think visually, so that's why I do things this way. And last time I ended at Wrench, so I need to pick up a desktop version, so I need to pick back up at Wrench VR. And what we're doing is we're just taking so after each game, I'll do what's called a rose, thorn, bud exercise, where I look at what is going well as far as that game's concerned from a UX perspective, what's going well, what's not going well, what would I do about it if it were a project I was on, what would be the next steps, what can be fixed about it. And do that for every game, and we did six, and so now I'm going through and all of these, and I'm just accumulating all of that into what you see here on the right, which is the synthesis. And I'm thinking through it while I'm doing it, and I'm looking at what are the overarching things that work, what are the individual game standouts, the good things, what are the overarching issues, and what are some individual game issues that we didn't see everywhere, but we still need to think about and learn from, and what are the overarching recommendations based on all of this. And I do usually have some follow-up to do, because maybe I made note of something that was an issue in one game, but I didn't think about it when I was playing the other games. So then to get a good set of research information, I will go back and double check the other games to see, was this a problem in those or not? Does it seem to be an overarching issue? And so that is the follow-up. And I'm just following up on each of these things and saying, yes, no, yes, not relevant, so forth. And then once we're done with that, also at the end of each game, we talk about, well, if we were translating this to XR, what we would need to think about. And so I'm also synthesizing that. And then I'm going to also synthesize, because usually whenever I do a report out, I like to make it educational for people so that they can learn as well. And even on my teams, even my reports for like actual work, I'm doing this. I will educate them on why. Why does this matter? What's the right thing? What's the best practice? If there's one. or the space, and I'll educate them as I go so that they can know and they can improve the work process and the experience. So I'm picking up at Wrench VR, because that's where we stopped last time. We did desktop, and now we're doing VR. And so now I'm just going to read through the post-it and see, are they already here or not? And so let's see. Good feedback when you complete tasks. I think I already had that here. Let's see. Oh, I think that's one I had to follow up on. Let's see. Right. Yeah, so it's here. Wrench VR, so I'm going to add yes to that one so I don't have to follow up on it. That's nice. Yeah, so when you complete a task, it lets you know you've been successful at it. The physical trash and recycling cans and boxes for objects in the world. This is what you would do in the world anyway. So that's a nice feature that they have. Let's see if I don't think anyone else did that besides Wrench. So this is, so it's the same game, it's just different platforms. But this is in both of them. So I'm just going to copy that over here in the standout column under Wrench. And now check marks when the task complete and ready to proceed to the next step. So that is on the task list. I know that that isn't happening in all the games because it didn't happen. It was a complaint in Rover Mechanic Simulator that they didn't use check marks. They used colored diamonds, red and green. And red and green, if you're colorblind, you can't tell those two apart. So it's not a good idea to use color only as your indicator of any kind of important information. Let's see. Yeah, because there's my bud on that. And check marks. Let's see. Am I double checking that? Let me see. Because I think on the task list. It's not going to be relevant on the last two because, again, as I mentioned before, the last two games that I played, First Steps and First Contacts, are more teaching you interaction versus Wrench, Car Mechanic, Rover Mechanic are teaching you a skill. So there's a difference there. So I'm going to have to separate those out and in some way in the report whenever I have to distinguish that there's a difference. So those don't have task lists per se because that's not what their purpose is. Their purpose is to teach you how to interact with the world. However, Wrench and Car Mechanic and Rover do have task lists. Let's see, give the ability to verms full task list. I don't say anything about check marks though, but let's see. And I need to double check Rover Mechanic Simulator. They don't let you see the full task list in Car Mechanic Simulator. So this looks like it's potentially a standout feature. So I'll have to think about how I report that. how I handle all this information once I get to creating something from it. The ability to practice tasks to get the hang of it. I think that's something that other ones do, so let's see. Assembly, disassembly, objective is easily accessible. Able to go at your own pace. Now, car mechanics simulator doesn't let you do that, I don't think, because they just go through the flow, and if you try to do something twice, it'll say you've already done that. You don't have to do it again. So there's no like practicing in that sense, unless you just go through the exercise again. But then you have to go through the whole thing again. That's not necessarily a overarching thing, but it is on. I'm going off my brain right now, my memory right now. I don't think you can do that in Rover Mechanics Simulator either. You can go at your own pace, but like repeating the same thing to practice it is not something you can do. So I think Wrench is the only one that lets you do that. Except, let's see, so I know it's a different kind of game, but you can practice with first contact and first steps as well. So let's see. These 3 games give you that ability. Okay. Wrist interface to bring up the tablet, easy access to panel. Sakar and Rover it's not relevant anywhere else. That is Wrench only. You're able to grab objects from a distance with the Raycaster without having to physically go there and kneel down and pick it up. That would be only in Wrench. That's only in Wrench. That's another standout from them. Teleportation Bezier targets circle when teleporting. Since this was the only VR game that let you teleport around, move around, because first steps and first contact, you're staying still. Car Mechanic and Rover were desktop games. So that's only with Wrench. Directing arrows on the floor for wayfinding, that was also only on Wrench. That wasn't present in any other experience. And it was only in their tutorial section. There are plenty of thorns on this one though. Even though there's a lot of things that were standout separate from the rest, there are also a lot of thorns. So look at that. Success feedback is stuck to the HUD, so it's hard to see. Yeah, that was only in wrench. Let's see. Okay. And disconnected and long task list per station. I have to keep referring back to the panel to know what to do and how. So disconnected and long task lists per station. I think that that's referring back. Let me see if I have this elsewhere, because I probably mentioned it in the desktop version. So it's here. Takes up a lot of space. You have to keep going back to the list and finding the place on the list to know what to do next. So yeah, it's the same complaint here. Let's see what I have as a bud. Takes a lot of space and you have to keep going back. Redesign the task list to show next task, or use better visual hierarchy for completed versus incomplete tasks. No, that's a separate thing. Because this seems to be talking about the interactions. Because of how. So it is a separate issue. See? Let's see, assumption. Okay, so yeah, it's a separate thing, so I'll just copy it. But it has to do with a task list, so I kind of want to put them together visually just so that we're thinking about the task list at the same time. Another cool thing about doing it with post-its instead of just writing a report or using words is you can rearrange stuff to make those connections visually. I'm going to go ahead and copy that bud so I don't lose the place. I'm changing the type of line so that I can actually see what line is going to what. Hello, hi Muffin, and hi Oz and Wet Noses. How are y'all doing? How's your Thursday? I think I'll go ahead and add. Did I not? Did I not do a bud for that? Oops. Did I not do a bud for that? Or did I cut it and paste it? Because I do that sometimes. I think that I just didn't do it. Well, I didn't even do what I tell everyone else to do. So what I tell everyone else to do, don't do what I do. is have a bud for every thorn. I guess I didn't put one here. The bud would be don't stick things to the HUD. The viewport. That is the best practice, and so then that was mentioned in bifocals and progressives, my article about that. There is a, besides it causing physical eye strain because you have to move your eyes to such a weird angle to see the HUD, that because the information that we're talking about in Wrench was up like in a weird, really weird position. So it was up, like where, like move your eyes up to where it's uncomfortable to look up. That's where it was. Very uncomfortable position. And then you had to read something while you're looking there. Terrible positioning. And also if you wear glasses, it was up above the glasses. So I am incredibly nearsighted. And I have to have things like right here. And even the VR headset, I can't even see the VR headset. I have to have glasses on in the VR headset to see it because I'm that nearsighted. And so this is up above my glasses where I can't even see it. And so then I can't even read what it's saying. So it's causing physical eye strain because you have to move your eyes to such a weird angle and you have to see what it said. And if you wear glasses, and you have to wear glasses in the headset to be able to see anything in the headset, then you're not going to be able to see the message. So that would be something over here. Learn the best practices. I've got one. It's about bifocals, trifocals, and progressives. But I don't remember the exact name of it right now. So, but it's about that. It's under legibility here. Bifocals and progressives. I have a video on it, and I also have a article about it under visibility and legibility. I will put those in the chat for you, and I will also try to remember to link those in the show notes. So yeah, and it talks about how important it is in the article and video of and I give like try to give a visual like example of it in the video. It's really hard to simulate poor eyesight because all the camera can do is blur the lens, but with poor eyesight it varies from person to person, and it's not so much a simple blur because it's more complex than that. But it kind of gives you the idea anyway. Like I can't even see the big E without my glasses. On the eye chart, if you've ever been to a eye doctor, I can't even see that big E. So I am very, very, very nearsighted. So take that into account in your designs. That I'm not the only one out there like that. There are all kinds of vision issues, and people need to be remembered. We are designing for humans, unless you're not. If you're designing for animals, that's another thing. I don't really know anything about animal-centered design, so I don't think I can help on that. But there are people out there that do know that. Not me. But you would study them, that's for sure. So show don't tell. So I got those buds in there so I don't lose them. Okay. I'm just gonna do the buds and the thorns together since they're, so I don't lose my place on them. Poor visual hierarchy of the task check marks. So meaning it's hard to tell in the task list. You have to search. It's not easy to just glance. That was only in wrench. Yeah, so UX design, human-centered design, is about more than just the visual design, the UI design. It's also about the humans. So you have to study the humans to know how to best design for them. And otherwise, it's just visual design. I missed another bud. How did I miss another bud? Wow. Okay. I was asleep that day. So a bud here. I'm partially asleep today. A bud here would be... I should probably go back and watch this later to see how many stupid mistakes I make because I'm half asleep today. Poor visual hierarchy, so you would still follow graphic design standards for your creation, regardless of whether you are. They still apply. That's already here, so I need this. And that is that bud. Okay, and so you have to finish all the repetitive tasks before you can proceed to the next station. Too much repetition becomes redundant and frustrating, so let me first make sure I didn't already say this somewhere else. Poor visual hierarchy. Oh. No, okay, so that's fine. So then this one, you have to finish all these tasks. I don't think I mentioned that. No. It was more cumbersome in VR than it was in 2D. Because of the size of the PlayStation? Play area? PlayStation. The play area, where I was. It's made for, I guess, the average adult male, which I'm not. I'm very short, and I'm not even 5 foot. I'm 4'10". And so if you're designing a space that's for the average adult male, it is going to be too large for me. And so it was more cumbersome to try to do all these repetitive tasks. First of all, because of that, because I had a hard time reaching things, but then also the game is quirky, buggy. The interactions are not like highly polished. So it was difficult to get the to grab things, even with the raycast doing the distance grabbing. It was still, yeah, I say it here, raycasting is not polished, always present, not in context. It was causing issues with interactions, like the touch interactions being too close together, so you're accidentally... It was cumbersome, and it made it really difficult and frustrating to do this, these repeated tasks, because it wouldn't have been as big of an issue if it were polished. If it were a polished game, but it's not a polished game. The version I have is not polished. Now, the version that is out there now may be polished. I'm having issues because I was playing it on the Oculus Store. There's a difference about the Oculus Store and the Steam Store, because I bought it on the Oculus Store, is that for some reason for the past year or so, I have been unable to update any apps on my Oculus Store because the Windows Defender interferes somehow. But even when I turn off Windows Defender, it still says the same thing. Windows Defender is stopping you from being able to update this. I don't know what the deal is. I can't figure it out. It's annoying. So I can't update that game to see if it's polished now. So sorry, Wrench, if it is polished now. The version I have is not. So Paws and Noses says, is there a way to account for variability in height or simply an average target heights? So there is a way to do that, and I talk about it in a video that I just recently released. Let's see. I think it's called Player Height and Perspective or something like that. Yeah. So I've got there's always an article. There's also, if there's a video, there's usually an article to go with it. So here's the link for that one. And that's a good one to call out, needing to go in that list of best practices that I'm going to add. So let me do that. Player height and perspective. Yeah. Yep. You're welcome. Okay. And if you scroll down, it'll link to the article too, so you have both. They're pretty similar, but I probably go in more depth in the video than I do the article. And you'd see visually examples. Let's see, so I'm gonna also add here, because I have these two buds, which are to remove the overly repetitive tasks, because some of them were just, okay, enough. It was just way too much. There were like 50 retries on it. It's like, come on. I know, and I know that they need to practice, but come on. Give them the option, because they were forcing it. They weren't letting you have the option. It was, you had to finish all 50 to go on. And that's just, yeah, give them the freedom to move on. Don't require the repetitiveness, because it was requiring it. But I'm going to also add that, let's see, ensuring the game polish. Would make that less frustrating, less cumbersome. So that would also help. And touch interactions were too close together. The wrist interface. Okay, so it was regarding the wrist interface. That was only on Wrench, because they're the only one that had that. And I had some other complaints about the tablet, I think. Let's see. You have to constantly switch back and forth between the tablet view and the task view. So I'm going to move all these down and add it there. Touch interactions on the tablet. Wrist interface. So that's clear. Since we're losing the context because I'm moving it over, I'm just adding context back. Larger target areas for touch is the obvious solution there. This thing's getting pretty big. Oh, but I have made some that are huge. Like way bigger than this. Ray castings not polished, always present, not in context. See. That is... I'm going to scoot these down so that they're a little cleaner here. Okay. Able to grab them from a distance, yeah. But that ray casting needs to be polished some. And study how other games have done this, because other games have done it very successfully. And not frustrating people. So that's why we like to game, is so that we can study how other people have done things. Not only does it teach us, like, learn from it, like what I'm doing right here is what works, what doesn't work, but it's also helping you see how other people have solved problems as well. Prioritize polishing the game as opposed to adding new features with no polish. Because they have this long list of features that they're adding. Well, I don't know if they're still adding. The game's been out a while. The game's been out a while, so I don't know how much they're working on it. Because again, I'm on the Rift version, so I can't get it updated because of that issue with the Oculus Store. So I would say if you can, even if you have an Oculus, and you use the Oculus Store, if you're getting a PC-based game, just get it on Steam. Don't get it on Oculus, because even though you've got a Quest, you can still play Steam games through your Quest with the link cable or with AirLink on the Quest 2, because Steam is a lot easier, and they're doing a better job of keeping that one up to date than they are the Rift store, because they're discontinuing the Rift, so it's not getting as much support as Steam is constantly getting support. So if you're going to buy PC-based games with your Quest, just get them through Steam and use the link cable if you're on a PC. Now, Mac is going to be different. Mac will be different. And there is a way to do that, but I forgot the name of it. It's a web-based service but you have to pay for it. But if you're on a PC and you're getting PC-based VR games, just get them through Steam and use or another source, and so that the support will actually continue for them. That's the fun thing about VR. It's still emerging. As far as technology goes, it's still constantly changing and improving. So But the Quest 2 should be supported for a little while. I've got the original. Controls for movement aren't polished. Yeah, it wasn't polished at all. There was some issues with the floor. See. Yeah, okay. And I'm just making sure I was doing things right because I feel like I'm half asleep, so lots of accidental movement, rotating versus teleporting. So this was a teleportation issue, only in wrench. This list of wrench issues is getting long. So I will have to make a caveat in whichever report I do that what version I'm using of wrench, and that this is the tutorial. I never actually made it to the game because the tutorial was so long and cumbersome that I played it for over an hour and still didn't make it to the game, to play the actual game, which is a bit too much for a tutorial. So there's a good way and a wrong way to build a tutorial. Yeah, it's a very long tutorial. Yeah, it's like, oh, I usually rage quit like partway through the tutorial. Like I haven't even made it to the game. I need to at some point. Rethink locomotion controls and study teleportation. Mental models. Yeah, so this is why we game, why we study how other people do things, so that we can learn from that, because we want to follow mental models that are like expectations, and that's also like getting the game that you're making or a game that you're evaluating in front of actual players to learn. That's why it's very important to do that. Some of the most valuable learnings that I got were from actually just watching people play the game and doing usability testing on the various games. That is the best way to learn. At least learn the issues. Now, figuring out how to solve those issues, solve those problems is going to take a little more effort, but getting that insight of watching the people play the game and where they struggle and how they think about things, because you're getting them to think out loud, is very, very educational. So accidental movement, teleporting. Love watching people interacting with your design. So many unexpected. Yeah, exactly. And so I'll have a design and I'll think this is the good design, and then I'll watch people using it. It's like, oh. Because they're not thinking about it the way I do, so that's why we need to. But it's also very, very rewarding when they do it the way you expect them to. That's also very rewarding. So see, I do know what I'm doing. Because it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, if you... It's like, I still get imposter syndrome too, and I've been doing this forever, so... Okay. So there were issues with accidental movement with the teleporting in wrench. It wasn't polished at all. So there was a lot of accidental movements. It was also in it. So this was the next issue, was the wayfinding arrows that were on the floor in the wrench game. And you can check out that video. I've got the links in the about section. On the Twitch About page, I've linked to all the games I've gone through so far, so there's a direct link to each video. If you watch the VR, Wrench VR is the one we're talking about right now, you'll see the floor, there are arrows on the floor, and those were interfering with the teleportation because of the way they set up the objects in the space. And you'd have to know a little bit about Unity to understand that, but the way they set it up was causing interference. It was not, again, it's about polishing the game. Game polish is very important. People don't think that, but because it takes extra time and effort to polish a game, and people generally just want to ship the game. But the game polish is actually one of the pillars of gaming UX. If it's not polished, it can cause a lot of issues. And for example, I was having trouble teleporting, which is a basic thing that you should be able to do in a game. So yeah, game polish and feel is actually one of the pillars of gaming UX. Did I make that? I don't think I did make that. Let's see if I did. Oh, I did. There you go. Learn the pillars of gaming UX. There's your video. And it's based on a book by Celia Hodent, and that link to that book is also in the About section. If you just scroll down, you'll see links to books and stuff on where to learn more. And we will be, of course, in there, I will be referencing the pillars of gaming UX. So that's going to already be here, but I'll make a note of it just in case. I'm half asleep when I do it. And yeah. Let's see, I should also, like, there is a pattern that I can share for, there's teleportation, and then there's also, so I'll just say it here, best practices and patterns. So I've got, I think I only have one pattern right now. The teleportation Bezier. That's a pattern that I have that is a very good pattern for how to design a teleportation interaction. And then this is the article for that. I don't have a video yet. I haven't got there yet. I'm slowly, once a month, releasing a new video to talk about the different articles in more detail. But I haven't made it to teleportation yet. But this is an example of actual stuff that I do for work. So like when, so that I'm not reinventing the wheel, this is why we like pattern libraries, is that you can just grab an example that someone else has done, how someone else has solved that problem. It's a good solution. And then they can see, how does this interaction work? In that game, how are they solving that problem? Where can you teleport, where you can't teleport? And what's that interaction like? And then talk through what are all the micro interactions of that teleportation, and what works about it, what doesn't work about it. So yeah, it's good to have a knowledge of that. That's why we game. That's why I'm gaming on this stream, is to gain that knowledge, and to work on that pattern library that is slowly growing, is examples of how other people have solved problems. So yeah. So yeah, I'll talk about that. And let's see. Difficult to grab objects even if the sphere is colliding with the object. So that's getting into Unity, how you actually make it. get more generous grab areas. That is my first like reaction is that you have to try multiple times before actually grabbing, and it's often at an uncomfortable angle. You have to like move your hand in an uncomfortable angle to get it to actually work. So that was only on Wrench. VR wasn't an issue. So I need to go through and make a note of, was this in VR only or desktop? So I need to go back and do that. That is all of the thorns from here. Let me make a note of that real quick. For Wrench, because I did play desktop and VR. Field of view, play space, that's for both. Play space too big, that's for both. Task list has all, that's for both. That's for both. Desktop, because I already say desktop there. Now I need to verify whether or not that was both. So I'm going to make a note to myself to do that. And just make it a different color so I see it. Because that's not a color I use, so it'll stand out. Touch interactions on, that is going to be on VR. At the torque station, I need to verify that assumptions that players have background knowledge, that's going to be on both. Takes an hour, still not done, that's both. Success feedback stuck to HUD, that's going to be VR. Core visual hierarchy, that's going to be both. Have to finish all repetitive tasks before, that's both. Ray casting is in VR. Controls for the movement aren't polished, that is VR. Lots of accidental, that's VR. Wayfinding arrows interfering with teleportation, that's VR. And VR. Okay. So I just have to verify these two. So I don't think on the desktop version I even got that far, because I quit before that. I got further in VR than I did on the desktop. But I think I also had to stop and go to a meeting or something that day. Okay, now. Okay, I'm gonna copy these over. Follow existing mental models for locomotion and grabs and such. So let's see what I already have here. Oops. Understand the best practices. Step-by-step tutorials are necessary in XR since new tech to most people. Don't think I have anything about teleportation, locomotion grabs. Take advantage of the technology and show how instead of just telling. Did I already say that? Yeah, get out of your 2D UI thinking. Start thinking in 360 space. Because that was one of the things that is an issue with Wrench, is And that's the thing that I see a lot of people that are transitioning into XR struggle with, is especially if you're coming from a 2D design background, is getting out of that 2D thinking and getting into 360 thinking, thinking about your space and thinking about how challenging yourself to get things off of those 2D UI panels into 360 space. Because I see a lot of designers, because I teach this as well at Circuit Stream, and I also have my own school. You can see, well, I don't, so Circuit Stream is where I teach, so that you can just Google Circuit Stream. I think it's circuitstream.com, and you can see that. But then there's also, I have my own school online. That's like a gap filler for things they don't teach in school. I'm adding more classes, but there's 2 right now that are the foundational prerequisites for anything else that I'm going to be teaching. Those are going to be the prerequisites, and they're free. The 2 prerequisites are free. So whenever I'm seeing someone new come in, and especially from a 2D background, they'll design an entire experience on a 2D screen in 360 space. So what they've done is they've just made a 2D panel with all their interactions on that 2D panel, and it's just floating in 360 space. And you want to get away from that. You got to challenge yourself, because you've got all of this space around you, and that's where also playing other games to see how they made things. So you did enroll in those, cool. I hope, give me feedback, make me, if it's mine you're talking about, if it's Circuit Streams, give them feedback. We all want feedback to make sure that those are working for you. Please, honest feedback, because we really truly want to make things better. So don't hold back on your feedback. Yeah, so playing games and seeing how they do it, and that's playing VR games and video games. But with the video games, you're going to have a little bit more of a challenge, because they do have a HUD, and that's that. Do you game? Do you game at all? Yeah. You do you have VR or just 2D gaming right now? PC games? Yeah. So on the PC game, you got your game HUD, where you've got all of your little tooltips for your controls, and oh, you did just get a headset. Cool. So there are tons of free demos out there. You don't have to spend all your money on games, because a lot of the games that I do, like when I played Rover Mechanic Simulator and Car Mechanic Simulator, I did the free demo. So you can just look for free demos and stuff. You don't have to spend all your money on games. But get in there and try out as many as you can, just to see how they're making things and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And think about it critically. And once you get over that awe factor, because you're going to have an awe factor at first on VR, but once you get over that awe factor, go back in and start thinking critically about those games. And knowing the best practices will help you with that. So if you're taking those classes, then that'll help with your critical thinking on that. But that's cool. That's exciting. You got a headset. My first VR headset, besides the... No, let's see. I got a cardboard headset, of course. That was my very first one. And then I can't remember if my first one was the PlayStation VR or this thing called Occipital Bridge. It's not worth buying unless you just have extra money on your hands and you like technology. Don't bother buying it, because it's not like it's kind of obsolete now, really. So don't bother buying it if it is still available, but it's so cool. So you can go watch like videos on it. I use a lot of footage from their examples. So So you can go like Google them and check out their videos. It's a very cool concept. It was a phone-based mixed reality. But the problem was that it kills your phone in like 5 minutes. So don't bother. But the concept is so cool. And then, so it was either that one or the PlayStation. I don't remember. Those were my first headsets. So that's the problem with augmented reality right now and phone-based experiences right now, is that it kills your battery very quickly. So yeah, and I also had the Zap. Let's see, wait, what was it called? Zapbox? I think it was called Zapbox AR. So it was the same thing, kind of like the occipital, and it was like $30. So I mean, that one's a little bit more affordable for you to spend your money on, but it's not a lot of experiences are available for it unless you want to make some. If you want to learn Unity and make stuff, then sure, go ahead. But it also, like in 10 minutes, my phone was dead. So yeah, that's the problem with the phone-based experiences. And then I eventually got a Quest. Once I actually pre-ordered the Quest when it was released. So let's see, I'm on Wrench VR. Follow existing meta models, take advantage. So if we're thinking about translating this because it's already in, so this is what we do if we're talking about a PC-based game on here, or a PlayStation-based game or whatever, because sometimes I'll play PlayStation. What would we have to think about if we were translating that into XR? But now, since we're in a VR game, what would we need to think about if we were translating it to mixed reality or AR? So I'm going to copy that stuff over. But if it's for mixed reality or AR, you would want to think about teaching the context out in the field, because obviously that is the benefit of augmented and mixed reality, is that it's augmenting your real world and it's mixing digital objects with the real world. So it needs to be, if you're training, so we're talking about training here, it needs to be in context of that world. So there's no point in teaching someone in augmented or mixed reality how to do something in their home if they're going to be working out somewhere else in the field, like at a manufacturing site or something. You could just do VR for that. But if you're going to do augmented or mixed reality, then that's the use case for that. The best use case for that is in the field, out there, where they're going to be. And that means that you're not going to be using digital models like you would in VR. You would be using the real stuff, the real equipment, the real things. And then you would have to know how to identify those things and make it smart to where it's teaching you about those things. So it's a different way of designing it, because instead of using the 3D models that you're using in VR and building the entire environment that you would be in VR, you're actually using the environment that's around you to bring in that information. So it's a different way of thinking about it. And you have less control over the design that way, at least the way that it's laid out. So you're going to have to learn how to like use markers or identifiers to be able to identify, depending on the technology, because there's limitations for the technology, how you identify a real object with augmented or mixed reality is going to vary by device. And so then you have to understand the limitations and capabilities of that technology so that you can do that. Did I say that? Because that is something important to know. Let's see. No, I did not. So I will add that to both places. And capabilities of the tech. Let's see. You have to anyway, but especially for mixed or augmented reality, because there's different. It's a different world than virtual reality. virtual reality is more standardized and it's easier essentially because you have full control over the world you're building. With augmented and mixed reality, you don't have full control over the world you're building. So let's see, I should probably mention that. So you don't have full control over the world building like you would with VR. You have to work with and intermix with the real world. So that's a different way of thinking about it than VR. And then also locomotion, you're not going to be worried about motion sickness mitigations like you do with VR, because with VR, there's a lot more, because you have to use artificial locomotion in virtual worlds because the worlds are always bigger than your real world, than your real world play space. So there's there's a disconnect in what you're seeing and what you're feeling. However, do I have motion sickness on here? That always comes up. I don't have a lot of content on augmented and mixed reality because I don't have any headsets, so I can't test anything. I did have access to them at a job I used to have. I don't have that job anymore. So I no longer have access to those devices. But since I don't have my own headsets, I'm not creating a lot of content around it. But you can learn more about those things on the websites because they all have documentation. Well, at least the two major ones do. HoloLens and Microsoft have documentation on Microsoft and Magically have documentation on their devices. You would just go to their developer portals and learn there. But so that's why I don't have a lot of documentation about augmented and mixed realities, because I don't have the tech myself, so I can't test stuff to validate that what I'm saying is actually true. But this much I do know based on when I did have it, that yeah, you're gonna have to think about it differently. Motion sickness is not as much of an issue because you are still seeing the real world. Now you would have to think about large objects moving in large digital objects moving in your field of view, because that can make you sick. But as long as you're so you still want to know the best practices for of what causes motion sickness and how to prevent that. But locomotion is going to be real world locomotion. So the mitigations that you put in place for locomotion are not going to be relevant for augmented and mixed reality, because you're walking around just like you do normally. Because it is the real world, you're just mixing the digital with it. So that is a different way of thinking about it in VR. Okay. And now we can move on to first steps. See, what time is it? 1:11. So this is a different type of experience. So that's probably a good place to stop. Do y'all have questions? Any questions? Feel free to ask questions, because I think that that's a good place to stop for the day on this. Because we're getting into a completely different type of experience. These two teach interactions, not skills. So I'll have to think about how that works. No questions? Oh yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for hanging out. Yeah, and start playing those games. And yeah, you have permission to play games now for your career advancement. You know, and and balance, of course. But yeah, you have permission now. It's legitimate. Yeah. So thanks. Y'all have a good rest of your week, and I'll see y'all next week. We're just gonna pick back up where we left off next week. So I'll see y'all then. Thanks.